By now, you should have a good grounding in the basics of the Constitution, and an overall picture of what the Constitution is, what it's for, and how it works. Now we're going to start looking at particular clauses and powers, beginning with the General Welfare Clause. The General Welfare Clause is perhaps the most misunderstood clause in the Constitution, even by politicians, judges, and constitutional law scholars. We'll look at the claims, and once again, reach the only reasonable conclusion by simple logic. The power is given in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. Clauses are not marked in the Constitution, but each paragraph is regarded as a separate clause. There is a mention of general welfare in the preamble, but it has no effect on the powers given. Remember that powers are given only in Article 1, Section 8. Clause 1 says in part, Congress shall have power to provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. This clause has been used to justify all sorts of powers for the government, but how many of those are legitimate and pursuant to the true meaning of the clause? To begin, let's talk about what general welfare actually means. Welfare refers to well-being, and general means that it is universal. The people as a whole benefit from the government action. When most people think of welfare, they think of a rich person being taxed and the money given to a poor person. This is welfare, but it is not general welfare. It's specific welfare. The poor person gains, but the rich person loses. With general welfare, everyone must benefit, and no one must be advantaged at the loss of another. To do so would be to establish an oligarchy. Let's look at an example that is more in line with general welfare. Roads. Roads benefit everyone in the area, and interstate roads benefit everyone in the country. Even if a person doesn't travel the roads himself, he almost certainly purchases products that have been shipped using these roads, or may need an ambulance to drive him to the hospital along those roads if he is injured. That's general welfare. However, not all roads are general welfare. The infamous Bridge to Nowhere was a $398 million project to link up a bridge to the tiny Gravina Island in Alaska. This bridge, which will be as long as the Golden Gate Bridge and taller than the Brooklyn Bridge, would benefit only a few affluent people, and would only provide the same service as a ferry that continues to run to and from the island every 30 minutes. This is not general welfare. This is a boondoggle. Another example of general welfare might be the post office. It certainly is convenient for people to be able to send letters to each other, and its use is universal in this country. Since everyone benefits, this is general welfare. However, the government has now given the U.S. Postal Service a monopoly on first-class mail. This removed a large portion of Western Union's business delivering mail and put Lysander Spooner's post office out of business completely. The lack of competition also removed choice from the people and arguably made rates higher than they would be otherwise with reduced quality. This is not general welfare. All of this has the effect of making sure the government works for the benefit of all the people, not a few, and not even a majority at the expense of others. This sets limits on the kinds of things the government can do and prevents oligarchy and an elite class of rulers. However, as anyone watching the news can see, the federal government engages in such activities all the time, many times citing the General Welfare Clause for support. This was a complaint of the Anti-Federalists when the Constitution was ratified, that this clause would give the government unlimited powers and give them a pretext of legitimacy in the process. James Madison rebutted the idea nicely in Federalist No. 41. Had no other enumeration or definition of the powers of the Congress been found in the Constitution than the general expressions just cited, the authors of the objection might have had some color to it. But what color can the objection have when the specification of the objects alluded to by these general terms immediately follows and is not even separated by a larger pause than a semicolon? For what purpose could the enumeration of particular powers be inserted if these and all others were meant to be included in the preceding general power? Nothing is more natural nor common than first to use a general phrase and then to explain and qualify it by a recital of particulars. Madison's logic is clear, as I shall now show. Let's say that Clause 1 does in fact allow the government to do anything as long as it is for the general welfare. That, as we have seen, would include running a post office and making roads. So why then does Clause 7 give them the power to establish post offices and post roads? If they can do it anyway from Clause 1, why bother mentioning them later? It is precisely as Madison said it was, not a specific power, but a clause that sets the scope for the later powers. In other words, you can post roads, but only if doing so provides for the common defense or general welfare of the United States. It's the proper scope, the proper context, under which the rest of the powers should be considered. To understand this further, let's look in more detail at Clause 1. What it actually says is that Congress has the power to collect taxes, etc., to pay debts, and provide for the common defense and general welfare. Taxation is really the start of all federal power. Any government must have the money to implement its laws. Whether it's building a post office or prosecuting counterfeiters, money must be raised and paid. If they can only raise money for the purpose of paying debts, providing for defense, and the general welfare, then they can't raise money for anything outside these purposes, and that automatically stifles the rest of the powers. They can only be used for purposes of defense and general welfare. So far from being a universal catch-all that allows the federal government to do whatever they want, the General Welfare Clause is actually an important restriction on the powers of government. Keep this in mind every time a politician or pundit utters the phrase general welfare. You'll be able to tell if he is using the term properly, or if he's using it as an excuse for the federal government to claim power it does not legitimately have. Until next time, stay strong and be free.